We're bringing the energy today. Okay, guys, bringing the energy. I've been listening to some of the old podcasts that I've done, and I feel like, I wasn't as loud and in your face as I could be. So today, I've got my SM7B back, and we're going to have better audio, even though now I'm wearing a mask. But you know what? Halloween is about 4 days away, so I'm trying to get into the spirit. So I'm not gonna tell you guys what DMPunk is wearing right now because frankly you probably don't want to see it. I'm doing everybody a favor by not showing him, but DMPunk joining me today, and I know he's fired up. I'm fired up. Let's get into this. This is the Atomic Marks podcast. DMPunk, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing well. Yeah, no, I'm glad you didn't show my costume. I'm wearing my original costume from when I was one of the dicks that came out and carried Joey his carried his body back at that first like pre AEW show. You know that like resurrected him.
I thought you were
I'm
talking
one
about
of
the
those.
Dicks, the tag team.
No, I'm talking about that time that you remember when that happened and with the dick guy. What's his name?
Joey
He
Ryan.
got Joey Ryan. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he got canceled. We can't say that anymore. Don't even
Yeah, I'm
just
probably
bleep that out.
we're gonna get taken down on YouTube for even mentioning his name, which is weird that like uh, NXT is doing a Joey Ryan kind of like gimmick with Jay Gacy or whatever his name is. Yeah, Joey Gacy. What's that guy on NXT?
Uh, yeah, no, I know who you're talking about. No, I feel like there's another one going. The one, what's the guy that's doing that also? There's a guy in AEW that's kind of starting a dick get deal, and I don't know. I feel like it's risky territory. Like it's been done, and it's certainly fallen flat on its face. Because I mean, not even David Starr is as low as uh, Joey Ryan is now, and David Starr is way down in the dumps. Like, oh my god, that guy nearly cost us an election as well as his wrestling talent. Like, oh my god.
You gotta quit saying Joey Ryan, or we're gonna get flagged. The YouTube algorithm, that's exactly what it's looking for. It's looking for those exact two words next to each other, so they could take down our video. So the tens of people that listen to this podcast won't be able to hear it.
You just
But
said it again too, though.
yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to edit this a little bit later.
This
We're
is
not
gonna.
we're
Oh my
we're not
god.
here to talk about Joey Ryan though. We're here to talk about what I'm calling one. I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Probably the biggest F1 race in America that's ever happened in America. What do you feel about that statement?
I'm not sure that that's true, but I hope it is. That was awesome. That was an awesome race.
I think. I mean, we'll find out moving forward. But if
Lewis has
um,
never won the title when he's not leading later than this in the hybrid era. The first championship that he had, he wasn't leading by this much, but that was at McLaren, and he won that literally on the last lap of the season. The last lap of the last race of the season, he won that championship. Since he's been in the Mercedes and in the turbo hybrid era, the only time that he hasn't won the championship is to Nico Rosberg, and it was because he wasn't leading after this race. After this point in the season, he wasn't leading, and that was the difference. But I believe, and I'll be honest with you, if the Mercedes are really having reliability trouble, we saw Bottas take another engine penalty. We saw Vettel take an engine penalty, and we saw Russell take an engine penalty. All those Mercedes, if they truly are having, then this may be an easy walk it in for Max. You know what I'm saying? Like he may end up walking this in because if Lewis has to take another engine over the next few races and Max doesn't, game over. Game over, I believe. Because Lewis is good and he's been coming through there, but the tracks that we're going to don't lend, they're like Austin, they don't lend to racing. So it's going to be pretty hard for Lewis. But as far as the biggest in history and all the fans there and stuff, yeah, no, that was crazy this weekend. There were 400,000 people there over the 3-day event. That's insane. That's and if you saw the ratings, Xfinity and NASCAR by a bunch, but Xfinity on Saturday, now it was by itself on Saturday, but Xfinity on Saturday beat the F1 ratings in the United States. Now, the F1, I want to be a little bit an AEW fan of Double O here. Now F1 won in the demo in the 18. They did win in the demo, but overall, Xfinity had even higher ratings than F1 did in the US, and so and NASCAR and Cup Series above that, and so like that's huge for this weekend. Like this is next year. This is going to be the biggest race weekend of the year because all of those organizations will play around that. Like it'll be the biggest TV, you know what I mean? Like everybody will be trying to get that. Those they'll certainly sell that at a higher premium, advertising wise.
I mean, F1, we all know, hasn't really completely taken off in America. Case in point, Meg the Stallion. Neither her or anybody in her entire entourage had any idea who Martin Brundle was.
You can't do that here.
And quite possibly one of the greatest comebacks I've heard in recent memory.
I can because I just did.
I actually can do that. I just did.
That lad is insane. He's a mad lad.
Dude. British, just dry, quick British wit. I mean, is there anything better?
Dude, if he would stop talking about track limits, I would fuck. And also being like, a Lewis Hamilton, basically like subscriber, like a stan of Lewis. Like if he would basically change everything else except for how funny he is on his grid walks. Like let's keep him for the grid walks. Let's do that. But I feel like he has too much power in F1 because he gets to sit there and give the world their opinion for every. So he's not on every race, but still he's on like 90% of the races, and he just gets to sit there and tell you what you should think about it. And a lot of times, what he thinks, like the track limit stuff. I mean, we saw how much better the racing could be if you're allowed to go offline at Texas this weekend. Like Alonso and Raikkonen and the whole situation with them where they went offline to pass each other. Like if you're allowed to go offline and pass at tracks, it makes the racing better. So who fucking cares where who went offline? Like, did he crash? Okay, so we're done. Let's keep going. If you don't cut the corner on the inside, if you don't want people to, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to make a rule, it can't be an inside corner cut. Like, I get that. I believe turn either 6 or 9 this weekend. That was one of the rules. Like I believe it was turn 9. And they weren't looking for track limits offline there. They were looking for where people would cut straight across there. And okay, that's fine because you're shortcutting the track. You know what I mean? But you're not shortcutting the track to go outside of somebody, no matter how far outside you go, to do that. It creates more line. Why wouldn't you? Every NASCAR track tries to do that. You know what I mean? Like every NASCAR track shaves, like Texas shaves fucking meters off of the surface to try to make the fucking track more exciting, to give it more lanes. So I don't get that at all, and I think that he is one of the people that has a huge role in that. Not there's others too, but like him chirping on that every week is such a big deal. But Max came out ahead. It was an exciting race. I felt like I was calling it. I was saying, look, Lewis is going to win this. Mercedes is not going to make the wrong call here. But man, Max continues to just show how good he is. Max is like really, really fast.
You've made the comment after Max crashed into Lewis at Monza. You made the comment that Max is in Lewis's head now, and I couldn't help but think when Lewis was ahead and should have been just like running away or at least creating some separation, like Max was right there like the entire time, just directly in his mirror
and talking about it. Yeah, he was talking about. He wasn't talking about like Lewis Wood. Wasn't talking about like I can't get around. He was calling to them and telling them like, yeah, here's where he's weak and here's where I'm good. I'm faster than him. Like it's gonna be, you know what I mean? Like I've got this. I can pass him anytime I want to. I'm faster than him. He's sliding the tires and stuff. It wasn't. And then after he made his pit stop, he was like, "You guys should pit Perez so that he has to," like he was, you know what I mean? Like he was telling them what they should do and everything. He was just like so in control of the whole situation. And they were both, and Lewis too, but they were both so much faster than everybody else, which is insane because there was at least Perez and Bottas were in the same cars as them, and they were not even they were barely on the same lap as them.
Well,
Like
Perez was
that by the end of the
dehydrated,
race.
so you got to give
Well,
him a
that's
little bit
true.
of.
He didn't get the drink for the whole race, so that's a big deal. You know what I mean? Like apparently it was hot. I mean, it was hot, and that's what made it like everybody have to stop multiple times more than anything was the heat. But yeah, he didn't have the drink, so he was in a Raikkonen situation. I just wondered if it spilled into the cockpit and like he was sitting in it, or what if it just wouldn't come out of the deal and they had to like worry about that weight at the end of the race. Because that's another thing is like they've got to count that as the overall weight at the end of the race. But it should even out, I guess, because it would have either been inside him or there, and the driver and the helmet and everything, they all get weighed. So it's all of it is the in NASCAR and everything else, the car gets weighed, the car is the limit, and blah blah blah. In Formula One, it's the driver and the car.
And
So,
sometimes while you're weighing in, the camera guy zooms in too closely and
dude,
just
when the race ended, the mayhem began. Like, dude, that was the craziest post race shit that I've ever seen. The cameraman knocks Hamilton off of the fucking weigh scale while he's doing it, like you were talking about there. Shaq comes up in some sort of like welded together cartoon car. Look that. Then Shaq gets on the podium with the F1 drivers, so it literally looks like Shaq is up there with like children.
yeah.
And I mean, literally, Shaq was taller standing on the ground than Lewis was standing on the second place podium. There, he was almost as tall as Max on the top. On the top, like he was right there with Max on the top. Like they were very and oh my goodness, it was quite an after event there, and everybody shook hands and everybody bumped fists and everybody said everything good. I think I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think that Lewis knows this is basically over. That he started to like come to the realization that like there's not going to be any. If he really does have to take another engine, like his good chances have passed. Like all of his good, because the last few tracks are going to be just like the track we just went to. They're going to be whoever gets out front first and has a better, quicker strategy over the deal. And it's also going to be, they're all going to be at tracks that have a lot of runoff areas. I don't know what Saudi Arabia is going to look like because nobody knows. It's not even fucking done yet. So
God, I
nobody.
forgot. I forgot about that.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't know about that, Saudi Arabia's track, like if you look up like Saudi Arabia's track right now, like it does not look finished. Like they are working feverishly.
I mean,
The
it
same
looks like
thing
they're building
happened.
it for next year. Like it looks like they're nowhere even semi close to it
The
being done.
same thing happened with Austin when they opened Coda. Coda was not like it was dirt. Like there was not pavement where the track was until just a little bit before the race, and it rained the weekend of the race, and so everybody was worried about the pavement and how it was going to have stuck and everything like that. And so it's not unusual, and it's not going to rain in Saudi Arabia. So um we basically like I feel confident they'll be able to get it done. Like they're working on it supposedly 24/7, and it's almost done, if not done already,
Well, they have
because
strict.
they've
They
got
have
to at
strict.
this point
They
they've
have
got to be
strict
building
labor
the
laws. They have strict labor laws over there. So
uh Yeah, and so I feel like that they will probably get it done somehow. But uh, either way, that track, the other tracks, and probably that track too, since it's a new track, it will have tons of runoff areas. It'll be like Texas. It'll be very hard for there to be a safety car. And even if there is a safety car, it doesn't necessarily mean that the safety car is going to help you. When the virtual safety car came out the other day, like in the race, at Austin, Perez was technically right in front of the deal. If they had seen the virtual safety car and pulled Perez in right when they did, like, or if he had seen it and just pulled in right when he did, right when that happened, he would have been the only person basically on track to be able to benefit from the virtual safety car, because the virtual safety car doesn't bunch everybody up. It just slows the race down to exactly the pace that it's going right now, minus so much, uh, and it effectively neutralizes. Everybody stays in exactly the same distance behind and in front of everybody until they go back to green. But it only lasts so long, and it was just so they could have a marshal run on the track and grab something and run right back off. So it didn't last for very long. But if Perez had come in right then, he would have basically gotten an almost for free pit stop, because the whole sector of the track that the Max and Lewis were ripping everybody up, which is basically sector 1 and sector 3, um, they would have been having to be at that virtual safety car speed, and he would have been being able to get a free pit stop. That's the problem. That's how Colton Herta won the race in IndyCar at COTA. Is he just happened? Will Power was winning the race, and he was winning the race by a lot, but because of where the safety car came out, he was fucked. Because the other guys got a free pit stop to him, and that's what happens at the next few tracks in F1, and it's just not like there's not a lot of opportunity for him to get points back. Maybe at Abu Dhabi in the very last race, that's it. But it's not double points anymore, so it's like, is there going to be enough points to make up? Is Max going? Here's what you have to think about: not can I beat him? It's, is Max going to finish bad enough in any of the next few races that I'm going to be able to make up points? Like, I'm going to be able to win, or at least finish better than him. But you'd think win, and him not get second. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he has to think about.
Put him in a wall. It's your only
That
option at this point.
that time has passed. That doesn't help him now. I said that the other day. I said that's why he can't just push him wide. And even if he does, like, it's a risky move, because even just how many points he was behind this week, this going into this weekend, not know how many he's behind now. Kicking the can down the road doesn't help when there's only 5 races left. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't help.
Well, if you can have another Silverstone situation where maybe you can get Botas to take one for the team, put him in the wall, get Verstappen to have a DNF, and then Hamilton wins the race.
And that's wishful thinking, I believe. I don't believe
Yeah.
that. I believe that if Max doesn't win the rest of the races, that he will finish second or third. And I don't think that you can really bet on anything besides that. Like, I don't think that you can give good odds for anything besides that.
Yeah, I think it seemed like this past weekend, like with Max winning that race, that probably was the moment that we'll look back and say, like, that's pretty much where he won the championship. Even though if it technically comes down to the second to last race of the season or whatever, like if it does come down to the wire, I think COTA is probably the entire turning point to where Max pretty much establishes himself as the champion. What do you think Mercedes could have done differently? Like, do you think they should have reacted to the undercut a little bit sooner? Like, what do you think they could have done to maybe put Lewis in a better situation?
From what I understand, they said after the race that staying out as long as they did and not reacting to it prevented an even further bloodbath. They called it a bloodbath. Like that, they feel like they would have lost even more places. Like Red Bull would have won 2 and then some. You know what I mean? If they hadn't gone as long as they did, because that's what they felt like. I mean, you saw Lewis at the end of the race. He was catching by a second, 3 and 4 seconds a lap for a few laps. But the problem with that track isn't wear so much as heat. And he could only put so much heat into the tires, especially as hot as it was. And so he only had a few laps to really push hard, and he could only push hard in certain places. And that's even the tip that Red Bull gave to Max was, look, hold on to your rears for the zones, they called it. And the zones were obviously the end of, what is it, like 10 or 11, the end of the one passing zone and the end of the other passing zone, basically, on the track. And it was so that he would have enough rears to get away from Hamilton there no matter what happened. And because that's where you're limited, is if you try to put too much gas down coming out of those, then you put too much heat into the tires and the tires gloss over and they're no good anymore. It's not that they're worn out, they just have too much heat in them. And that's kind of what Grosjean was talking about with IndyCar. Is it's not like Formula One where the tires are so sensitive and everything's more of a management type situation like that. It's more IndyCar has tires that you drive because they refuel as well. You have tires and you go out there and you drive as fast as you possibly can until those tires run out, and then you come in, change the tires, pull the gas back in, go out and do the same thing again. And there's not so much like managing and things like that. And this race was really one of those, and it really showed how because to be in a race like that and win a race like that and dominate a race like that, you've got to do what Max did. And it's like I said earlier, when he was behind Hamilton when he got second at the beginning, he wasn't fretting about it. He was giving information to them and he was piloting the race from where he was at. You know what I mean? Like Lewis was leading, but he was in control. You could hear it in his voice and in the commands that he was giving to the team and stuff and the information he was giving to the team. He was in control of that whole race. Danica said it before the race, and Danica Patrick was one of the announcers before the race, and Danica said it before the race, and I was saying the same thing to my friend while we were watching it. Whether Lewis gets in first or whether Max gets in first and Lewis is in second at the beginning of the race, he's a sitting duck. There's no good position for Lewis Hamilton to be because he's behind in points now, and so now he's either got to be the one. Or if he gets in second, he's either got to be the first one to pull the trigger, and everybody knows that, or he gets in first and he's got to be the one that goes long because the other guy's going to pull the trigger first no matter what he does. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing he can do as far as making the pit stops. And he was in a sitting duck situation, and it's because he's losing. You know what I mean? It's because he's behind, and then and now he's further. She predicted it perfectly. Like there's no good scenario for him because whatever his plan is, it has a almost guaranteed to be better counter that the other person can do without you being able to do anything but react to it. And so he was. I believe Mercedes really did what they did because they had to. I don't. It's got to be clear by now. We're not seeing new updates and stuff. They're done with the car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there was nobody. If you go look at the stuff from this weekend, everything is the same. Like there's some version of what they ran kind of at Turkey, and that's it, and that's the car, and that's probably going to be the car based on the style of track we're going to for the rest of the season. Even Doha, the added one, um, like the most up in the air one will be the next two races, and that's Mexico and Brazil. Once we're done with Mexico and Brazil, Doha, Saudi Arabia, and Abu Dhabi will all be exactly like Austin, and so that's why it doesn't seem like it's in good shape for for Mercedes. It doesn't seem like Lewis is going to pull this one out. It seems like it's about to maybe start to get boring after the next race. You know what I mean? Like it may start to get like insurmountable. He may clinch before the Abu Dhabi.
And that's another thing is, where's Hamilton going to finish in these upcoming races? I mean, it's not even a guarantee that he's going to finish second in all of these races. So, I mean,
Oh, he can't not finish first in a lot of the
yeah,
remaining races, period. And then he's going to need some help from there because, like I said before, like if Max doesn't win, if you'd give me a bet right now that if Max doesn't win any of the next few races, any of the next 5 races, the last 5, he would either finish second or third in that. You know what I mean? Like if he doesn't win, he's going to either finish second or third. I'll bet that all day because that's the play. You know what I mean? Like he knows that. He knows that like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for both him and for Red Bull. And in that situation, like I've got to whether I want to beat him in the race that I'm in or not. If I can get second in this, even if he wins, I'm already ahead. Everything will be okay. Like this is, you know what I mean? I'm winning. This is me winning by staying here. You know, I I, I have no doubt that Max is going to do that.
such an important weekend. I think that we're not really going to see the complete implications of how big this race was this weekend until at the end of the season, and just moving forward for seeing how we've seen the growth of F1 in America and just how the American market is progressing for open wheel racing. They're adding Miami to the schedule next year. There's talks of a Las Vegas race. So it's just gonna be very interesting to see just how the American market shapes up. Even though there was talks of possibly a American F1 team entering into the fray, but it looks like that's not going to happen, at least right this moment.
Andretti Motorsports from IndyCar was going, owned by Michael Andretti, Mario Andretti's son, was going to buy the Alfa Romeo team in F1, and that fell through this week because at the last minute, Alfa Romeo wanted another. They had already agreed to buy it for about basically $350 million, and they wanted another. At the last minute, they decided to add in a deal that said another $50 million over 5 years. So they were Andretti walked away from the deal. So that's that. Probably the last seat available in Formula One next year, as far as drivers, is Giovinazzi's seat right now, because Bottas is coming from Mercedes to Alfa Romeo to replace where Raikkonen is retiring, and that other seat is the only seat that hasn't been named. Every other seat in F1 has been named. And it's 100%, I'm telling you, it's going to go to the Chinese fellow that is in F2 right now, because of sponsorship money. Um, but there was some talk with Andretti buying it that possibly Colton Herta could be in it from IndyCar. And there was some talk that he might, if they bought the team, go there, and maybe even Grosjean would run some of the races, because Grosjean is working for Andretti now in the old Ryan Hunter Ray car, the DHL, sometimes Pennzoil car that's yellow in IndyCar. He's running that next year, and he's running all the races. So there was some talk that maybe even he would do some of those races with Herta, but now that's all fallen through completely.
Yeah, disappointing. But we were talking about this earlier. I think there's a pretty good possibility, maybe not tomorrow or anything, but within the next 5 years or so, that another investor would come along and try to buy their way into F1. I think Colton Herta being in F1, I think would be such a huge thing because it's
I mean,
not very often that you see a American driver of that caliber that could possibly be able to compete at such a high level in Formula One.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to be the parade shitter here, the shit on the people's parade. But basically, now it seems like if he was going to get a chance in Formula One, unless he dominates, and if somebody gets a chance out of Formula One, and this is the same way it was when Juan Pablo Montoya came to F1, and when there was another guy named shit, I think he was an Italian or French. Anyway, there was another guy that did this for a while. If you dominate IndyCar, like, then you can, if you do that for a year or certainly for 2 years, like, somebody from F1 will give you a chance. And like in Juan Pablo Montoya's chance situation, maybe it's like McLaren, maybe it's somebody really good. Maybe it's Williams at a moment where they're really good. Like, that could happen, but you have to do that. And the likelihood that Herta does that now, where Grosjean is in basically the same car, he's in the same team as him. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's in another. IndyCar is a little different than F1 in that, they have multiple teams and everybody has their own pit box and stuff like that. So they have their own mechanics and stuff, and it's a totally different team, but they're sharing information, like, as far as technical stuff, and the cars are very similar. And so that's why I feel like he's not going to beat Grosjean next year. I just don't feel like he's going to beat Grosjean next year without some sort of help from some sort of outside force that causes it to happen. Because in the same car, if he does, then maybe that could be as impressive. Maybe it could be as impressive. But like I said, like, the only way you get a good team in IndyCar, I mean, in Formula One, to give you a chance out of IndyCar is you dominate the series, or you dominate the series twice. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes it takes that, and maybe even more than that in some cases. But that's, in the past, that has shown. Like I said, Juan Pablo Montoya and I want to say his name was Duresta. Anyway, the other guy, and Sebastian Bourdais, when he came back from IndyCar, he's one of the best IndyCar drivers there's ever been, and it's because he was in Formula One for a while, and so this is a lot simpler and a lot more just race the car as fast as you can, and then we'll make a bit, and then so it helps a lot in that situation to go to have been in Formula One, especially if you were with a bad team, especially if you're like Bourdais was, where like your teammate was Sebastian Vettel at Toro Rosso.
Yeah.
He
Um,
was the first person to ever win a race for the team, and I and I was still like in like 12th, just out of the points.
yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see exactly what happens. I have confidence. Maybe it's ill-founded that Colton Herta, I think, is going to have another really good season next year. Probably, I don't know. Grosjean's a wild card. He could.
Is he?
Well, we still don't completely know what he's going to be able to do on an oval. Although,
Don't we? Did we not see? Like, okay, no, I'll give you this. I don't think he's going to win an oval race next year necessarily, because you saw what happened to him in the St. Louis race, like in the St. Louis the arch, what's it called, Worldwide Speedway,
yeah,
the
gateways.
oval race that, yeah, Gateway, thank you. The race that he did compete in, that was an oval race. He was real good on the stints where he didn't have to like make a live pit stop, but then making a live pit stop, he was caught out by how completely different the car is when you come out of the pits on new tires, to and especially with adjustments and stuff, to what it was before. And like, he's going to have to adjust to that, and he didn't in that, you know what I mean? Like, he did, I believe, after that in the race he was a lot better. That never happened again, but he couldn't make up in what he had lost in that, because in IndyCar it's not like NASCAR. There's not free passes. There's not, you know what I'm saying? There's not all this stuff like that. Like, it's a pretty straightforward race. It just happens on an oval. And so because of that, it's pretty punishing when when you're not the fastest person on the, because if somebody has a clean race and they're relatively fast, they will finish higher than everybody that did not have a clean race. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the issue with those, especially at the really fast tracks like Texas and Indianapolis, and well, when they used to do Pocono, stuff like that. Like, at the really fast tracks, they really get away from you, because while you're not going very fast, they're going 200 plus, close to 200 miles an hour and stuff, and so they're getting way the fuck ahead of you, not just like NASCAR, like 140 miles an hour ahead of you. They're getting way further than that ahead of you.
I think that we need to get some sort of petition going to get the fan boost on the oval tracks, and see how that works out. Speaking of oval, speaking of NASCAR, Kyle Larson won at Texas last week. They were at Kansas this previous week, and he won there. But I don't think anybody cares about that because he won at Texas, therefore sealing his way into the championship race and giving
Man,
him some.
they really taught that guy not to be racist, didn't they?
Really taught him real good, and now he's putting himself in a pretty prime position to actually win the championship. But I know what you're gonna say, that this entire thing was set up for Baby Chase to take the trophy home. But you got to be at
If
least a little concerned that Kyle Larson might pose a pretty serious threat, right?
if Chase Elliott doesn't win that race, then it's on Chase Elliott. You know what I mean? It's on Chase Elliott's lap if Chase Elliott doesn't win that race. Uh, like I don't know. Like, I can't imagine. Now, I bet Larson wasn't good at a lot of tracks that he's fucking won at twice this year. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's unquestionably the best driver this year. That goes without saying. He won the regular season, whatever they call it, deal. But if they had used the old points where it was the season whole deal instead of the playoffs, there's no question he would have clinched by now by a lot. Um, but so would Kevin Harvick have last year. And so, or 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Kevin Harvick won 9 races, I believe. And I believe that's where we're at right now with Larson over the season. But either way, they're comparing this to a real dominant. Like, before the playoffs, 2001 Jeff Gordon season, where Jeff Gordon won, I believe, 6 or 7 races, and he had as many top fives as Larson has, or top tens as Larson had this year. It's I mean, it is that's his competitor. That's who I believe that. But the thing is if this race this weekend hadn't gone the way that it went, hadn't been such a demolition derby, especially amongst the playoff cars, then Chase would still be fighting for a spot in. Like, he would still be fighting for a spot in. Going into this race this past weekend at Kansas, Chase was still fighting for tooth and nail for the spot in, for the spots into the championship four. And I mean, Martinsville doesn't lend to exactly predictable outcomes. The difference is this weekend there were so many situations where people took great race cars and turned them into barely able to finish race cars, through no fault of their own, through just the wind blowing them out of the way and stuff, when they could have just backed off a little bit and survived the race and finished a lot higher. I was pretty surprised at how hard they were racing actually at this one, but I guess that shows that maybe some of them, specifically maybe the Toyotas, don't think their short track package is as good as some of the other brands' short track package. But I mean, come on, look at how many Hendrick wins we've had at the mile and a half. So how can it, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I feel like everybody was way too aggressive this weekend. Like they took themselves out of it. Now, Blaney won't get in. A lot of people are took themselves out this weekend.
Last race of the year, can't hold anything back now. It's a
It's
water
not
boy.
the
It's a water boy.
it's not the last race. We got 2 races left, but
I know.
it's the last race. I know. Martinsville. It's like Dale Jr. said. Martinsville is like, this year is the race, because it's going to be a short track race. That's what NASCAR is building more tracks of. So whether we like it or we don't like it, the new car is going to be racing on these. It's going to be like this for a while. So, like, it is exciting. It's a lot more chaotic, and it's a lot closer racing because they're going slower. It's not as fast. So that's the thing. But I don't think that, I think we've kind of proven, especially with the current car, that fast racing doesn't necessarily make good racing. I think it's a better probably product for that time slot and for this. If racing really does take back off, if they can build off of last weekend and get people to continue to watch this weekend and watch Martinsville, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be like Lewis and Max coming down to the last lap being seconds apart from each other. You know what I mean? It's going to come down to like Mick Schumacher giving Max DRS, but not Lewis. Because he doesn't want him to break his dad's record.
Yep. Short tracks and street courses. That's gonna be new NASCAR. Okay.
We'll see about the street course stuff. We'll see. We'll see.
Speaking of Saudi Arabia, I guess we might as well talk a little bit of wrestling. Have we?
So now that we're talking about wrestling, I can say you got a very burying Smarks look there going with the Jason mask and the hat like that. You got a very, very burying Smarks look going there.
Oh
I
yeah,
like that.
that's what I'm going for. I'm like
So
Excalibur.
hey, last weekend, did Tony Khan talk a whole bunch of shit on everything that he could get his hands on, Twitter, any sort of interviews that he did? Did Tony Khan talk a whole bunch of shit about how he was going to beat SmackDown in head to head on Friday night last week? Because I don't remember if it was last week or when it was, and I just was wondering because I heard the ratings today, and I heard that even on Saturday night, the live AEW got beat by the rerun of SmackDown. And I just, like, on that type of, like, when he's talking that much, I just can't believe that that's true. Is that true?
I mean,
Because I hadn't
it was a
heard.
compelling episode of SmackDown. It was a very meta episode where you would kind of need to see it a couple of times. It's like every time you watch it, you notice something different. Like, oh, I didn't see that before. Now it makes sense. Like,
Only
oh,
the end was head to head, and that was the part where do you think? Because here's what I think. I think Charlotte has a handshake. Let's talk about that, okay? So that we can talk about this. The end of SmackDown this last week was fucking not scripted, like in some ways. So Charlotte and Becky come out, and they both got drafted in the current draft that's going on to different shows, and like so now Becky's got to go to Raw and uh, Charlotte to Smack. Anyway, so they come out and they're supposed to give the belts to each other, and there's some tension and stuff and everything, and that's all like part of the deal. But Charlotte at the end of it, instead of handing the belt to Becky, drops it on the ground.
Dun dun
Big
dun.
no-no. Like, you don't do that. Like, there's no way that was in the script, and that is a big no-no. Okay, so before we talk about anything any further, conspiracy theory. Charlotte has a
Don't you
handshake.
can't say that either on YouTube. So it's just
Conspiracy.
okay.
Okay, Charlotte has Charlotte has a handshake deal with Tony Khan, and that was supposed to be the Medusa moment. Okay, that was supposed to be the Alundra Blaze Medusa moment where she brought the WWE Women's Championship to Nitro and threw it in the trash can or whatever. Like, that was supposed to be that, because she has a handshake deal with Tony that she's going to get to AEW whenever she forces her way out. Okay, because cut to they end the segment as best they can, because Charlotte just walks out of the ring after that. You know what I mean? And like, there's nothing that like can be done. Becky doesn't want to make it worse by trying to like continue to work with her when she's obviously gone into business for herself. So
You sound like
when
such a Becky mark right now. I just want to say I want to throw that out there. So just
I like Becky, I
keep
like
going.
Becky.
Keep going.
So Becky comes to the curtains backstage. X fucking explodes on fucking Charlotte. Like, just goes, calls her a bitch in front of everybody, tells her that tells her straight up that she believes she's going into business for herself, and that this isn't about, like, you're fucking people can blah blah blah. Just all the stuff that you say in wrestling, like about how you owe people everything. Those before respect.
Your father's pulling his dicks out on planes. Oi.
I don't think she's either way. The word around the campfire is that she, at the end of what Becky said, everybody else that was standing around there, cast, crew, everybody that was standing around there started clapping because they're all done with Charlotte shit. And that's not like the only time that's happened. So supposedly they're all done with Charlotte shit, to the point that they start clapping. Charlotte fucking explode. And I can't imagine Charlotte not already being upset just listening to Becky, even if she was back and forth with her for a while there. But she fucking hears everybody start clapping, and they apparently, and this is not a work, apparently Charlotte had to be escorted from the building by security because she was like throwing shit, and it got like overtly violent. And so that's what's going on. That happened,
Like
and the next day Andrade, her fiance, who's in AEW, posted a picture of them in Planet Fitness wearing AEW hats, and it didn't say anything. But either way, like, that is a big deal. The problem with it is it couldn't have happened on a worse night because of the ratings that I just told you about. It was basically like, they had they had just reached that like point where TNA had Samoa Joe and AJ Styles and stuff, and was really like talking about, and then they just didn't, and it comes on that night, and so now Charlotte has to, if she's smart and she wants, and her dad will tell her this, I believe, but also at the same time her dad wants to compete again, and because of everything that happened, from what I heard, that's why she did. Part of the reason why she wants out is not just because she wants to go. It's because she feels like WWE, and this makes no sense to me. She thinks WWE should have done more to protect her dad from the dark side of the ring people in that plane ride from hell episode. And she feels like they didn't do enough to tell him not to do those interviews. And it's like, bro, how can you be mad at WWE about that? Dark side of the ring is like, basically, it's like, how like, you don't commit a murder if you hire a hitman. You know what I mean? It's like that for AEW with Dark Side of the Ring. Like, they don't, they don't actually put it out, AEW, but they pay those guys to put it out so that it, is like a hit piece on WWE. And so, like, how could she be mad at WWE for letting him hang himself by doing that episode? You know what I mean? Like,
But he
he
wasn't. He
wanted to
wasn't
do
actually
it,
on the episode, was he?
wasn't he?
I don't.
Yeah. She feels like they should have done more to protect him from those people and everyone that has done all the stuff that has to do with that. And I'm not sure that's really their. I'm not sure that that's really their. With him wanting the stuff that he's wanting, like wanting to get back in the ring and stuff like that, I'm not sure that that's their deal. Also, we have to have the conversation, like, and it's a real conversation at this point, and that's WWE was doing more with Andrade than AEW is right now, and that's I mean, like like, whether that's true or that's not true, like it's certainly time to like form the committee and have that conversation. You know what I mean? Like at least like form a planning committee about that conversation, because that's fucking like that ship has we've been through the like growing phase of that, and so it's now time to have that conversation, because if you think about it, he was getting 5-star matches out the wazoo with WWE, and then he got moved up to main roster and was still getting some TV time and stuff. And it wasn't just like, like it is now, where it's like maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes of the show. He was getting a pay-per-view slot and stuff like that, and he's not anymore. And if he does, it's like he got no build up for it. He got the fucking Joey Janela and Sonny build up.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say that AEW isn't doing anything for Andrade because they did give him the El Ilado. So, I mean, they're at least adding on to his name, and so
The only person the only person that has suffered more than him that has come from WWE is Malachi Black. Malachi Black just completed the full like circle of like he just did the whole full circle of like what you do when you go into now he'll go to dark, and he'll be on dark for a while, but he just like
hey,
he came in.
Brian Danielson's on Dark. Okay, so let's not act like Dark. Dark is the main event. That Dark is actually their main TV show because that's where you see the real stars.
Yeah. Well, and Tony Khan does every episode, right? Like he now, because he doesn't want any bad raps getting out, right?
I think the quality of the raps has gone up ever since he took over the show. But
Really?
I want to say something. You're talking about a violent backstage moment at WWE. I mean, does Charlotte going over to AEW, has she seen their backstage segments? I mean, there's a lot of violence and chaos that goes down over there. I mean, it just seems like no matter where you go, it's going to be impossible to find a safe work environment.
The UFC?
UFC, yeah, maybe.
Maybe. No, John Jones. So yeah, no, that wouldn't be good for. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The ratings thing, the head to head thing. I didn't actually see the actual tweets. I just like kind of heard about them, but I don't. Did Tony Khan actually think that they were going to beat WWE head to head, or was he just trying to stir up some controversy? And now for like descending from the rafters, Eric Bischoff now who has made multiple appearances on AEW is now like throwing a ton of shade at Tony Khan, and I'm wondering how much of that is a
Dude,
work. And it's
Eric Bischoff's new podcast, like that he's doing now, is gonna like if you guys like our podcast, fucking listen to Eric Bischoff's new podcast, because that motherfucker does not have any quarter for Tony Khan and for what he's saying and doing about. Like, dude, he just spends his entire show. Anytime somebody will bring it up, he will sit there and just lay into. Well, yeah, I mean, Tony Khan's doing a good job, but he's also a piece of and just he'll just lay him out, and he does a great job. But yeah, no, he's kind of turned on him as well, and it's because like he's talking about how they're beating them and stuff, and he says, well, you're not going head to head, and even when you were going head to head, you weren't even really going head to head, because you're going head to head with NXT, and I know that was their most popular thing you wanted to beat at the time, but it wasn't really their biggest show, and so this fueled this whole deal where Tony Khan decided that last Friday night was going to be the fucking line in the sand, as he called it, where they were going to beat SmackDown, which is considered WWE's biggest show now because it's on Fox. and they were going to beat SmackDown head to head for 30 minutes, because 30 minutes of their show was going to be head to head. And he decided he was going to do that. So he poked the bear. And in response to that, and this was like a week before last Friday. So in response to that, WWE announced unprecedented that out of nowhere, for seemingly for no reason, like, because WWE doesn't acknowledge even that AEW exists except on the Steve Austin podcast, I guess. They didn't say why they were doing it, but all of a sudden last week, in the middle of the week, Fox announces, and joint with AEW, with WWE, that the last 30 minutes of SmackDown, which is going to be Sasha Banks versus, who was it? Becky? Was it? No, it was.
It was Sasha
What?
and Bianca, wasn't it? Was it?
Yeah, it was Sasha and Bianca for the number one contender spot. They were going to, that last 30 minutes was going to be commercial free. And so Tony puts out the tweet that, well, I don't think that's very sporting, but if you just want to play with money, then that's fine, because we can do that. Like, I have more money than them. So, and he just like poked them like that. And it was just like, why would you, like, you obviously got a response from it. Let's see, what did Tony say here? I thought I had Tony's little tweet here where he was talking about um how he didn't think it was very sporting. Let's see.
Sporting.
I can do that. This is Tony Khan on SmackDown's final 30 minutes being commercial free. He said, I can do that. It doesn't seem very civil, but I have more money than they do, so I can afford to do that longer than they can. And that's that's where his mic drop was last week, before they just lost in the ratings real bad. Like, let's see here. They lost. SmackDown on Friday night had 2.25 million viewers. Rampage in the same time slot. They were only head to head for 30 minutes, but it was on at the same time for a minute. Had 533,000 people watching it. Okay, so a little over 500,000
Big
to
oof.
2.4 million, 2.25 million. Excuse me. Then Saturday night, they had a live Dynamite on because of the baseball game and everything that happened. Fox also, though, because what was it? The Dodgers and or one of the series in baseball ended early, and so they didn't have to have the game 7 on Saturday night. And so there was nothing on Fox. That's what they had scheduled. So they said, okay, tonight, head to head with that Dynamite that's live that they're putting on tonight on TNT, we're going to put a replay of last night's SmackDown, the one we had just talked about with Charlotte and everything at the end, and that. So then they have 578,000, and Dynamite has 515,000.
Yeah. I don't understand. I mean, AEW at its peak can do maybe like 1.2, 1.4. Like, I forget what they had for the CM Punk debut. I just don't, like, SmackDown consistently stays right at that 2 million mark. I don't understand where Tony Khan thought these extra people were going to come from. Like,
Well, he said they were going to be dormant wrestling fans that came out of the woodwork and came back to that and wanted to, watch wrestling. And obviously
but
that's been proven.
they came back to see CM Punk. Like, it's established at this time that this is the dormant wrestling crowd.
Okay, so well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, no. So Eric Bischoff on his podcast, and this is his last, the most recent podcast. There's a quote from that about that, and Bischoff said, and this is him again taking just straight on direct howitzer shots at Tony Khan and at everything that's happening with AEW, and them saying that they were going to do that. Dude, if Tony Khan, I don't know, Tony Khan, everything that we've said was 100% true. I said, the stuff that they're getting from Punk and the biggest moments of that, all that stuff, it's going to be the biggest thing they're going to get. It's all going to be downhill from there. And if that's as big as it can get, it's not going to be even close to big enough to do anything it's going to be a really good indie federation. And he may make a business out of it someday. You know what I mean? But as long as he's running it like this, like he's a fucking, like Miami cocaine dealer, Like there's no possible way. Like he's going to end up with hippos in Colombia, like Pablo Escobar. Like this is not that. Eric Bischoff on his video, when Scott Hall and Kevin Nash came in, we took off. CM Punk, you came in and you shit the bed in terms of ratings, and he's calling that shit the bed, and that's like I said, like howitzer shots at it. But that was their biggest ratings ever. You know what I mean? Like that was as big as it was gonna get, and that was their biggest ratings ever. They'll get another one when Bray Wyatt comes in. If Bray Wyatt comes in, okay, like they'll get another big bump. But again, if they don't sustain it, if they can't pull more than close to 500,000, let's say, when they really get a good deal going, like 700,000, a million even. They need to be way over a million. You know what I mean? They need to be way over a million consistently to be building up to where they're about to start competing with WWE. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It, it it's getting like that's it, it seemed a lot like it's going into that Friday night when Tony Khan built it up like that. So many things had happened good for AEW in a row that even as a AEW pessimist, it seemed like, man, they've really got the ball rolling. You know what I mean? Like they've really had some good stuff in a row. But after the way he built that up, like, and maybe it's completely manufactured by the way he built it up and everything. But either way, it feels like now, like the morale can't be great as far as that stuff. His morale is obviously not great, but I'm saying like the morale can't be great going after that. You know what I mean? He hasn't answered any requests for any comment on losing the rating. He hasn't answered anything since that happened Saturday night.
Oh my
So
god.
there's no. Oh my
Wardrobe
god, it's like the
malfunction.
real No, this is
Oh
like
my
what when
god.
the real
All right.
Jason's mask. Okay. Oh my god, this is like when the real Jason's mask came
Well, now I
off.
got just the contrast on my green screen. All right.
And we're not doing burying Smarks memorial anymore, so it's okay though. No, you're back now, full you.
I want to say for the record, I don't think that Tony Khan does cocaine. I think that he does prescription Adderall. Okay, I just want to get that out there.
I disagree. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive.
That's very true. Yeah, I think the entire thing is ill-founded. It should be pretty established right now what the ceiling is for AEW. You know, like at the absolute most that they could get. Like if Bray Wyatt came back, you're probably looking at a 1.4, 1.5, and I think they should at least that Tony Khan should accept that for the time being. It's not to say that they can't potentially grow their audience, but they're not going to magically get 600,000 more people than they had for the CM Punk debut.
And even if they
Like,
did, that would get them half. That would get them halfway. You know what I mean?
no, I'm so,
Like
like
even
the
if they got that consistently, whatever the top number that they got with CM Punk or with Daniel Bryan, whichever it was, whatever the top number that they got, period. If they got that every week, they would still only be about a little over halfway there. They would still have a long way to go because getting the rest of those people isn't as easy as getting the people that you've gotten before, because those people that you got before, they were ready for anything else. You know what I'm saying? They were ready for anything. They were finding New Japan on the internet and pretending like they liked that. You know what I mean? Like they were these. You know what I'm saying? Like that there was a lot of other stuff that they could have found that, and they would have been just as happy with it. People were saying the same stuff up until the CM Punk thing and stuff. People were saying the same stuff about AEW. They were saying the same stuff that they're saying about AEW, about Impact, and about Ring of Honor, and about everybody else. Even when New Japan tried to start the New Japan show in the U.S., like they were saying all that same stuff about all those, but it wasn't taken seriously because it was just a work. It was just something you said to, like put yourself. You know what I mean? It's like saying we're this is the world championship. You know what I'm saying?
it's like
This is this is
Charlie Haas and SWE calling him the real world's champion. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. It's just it's not that's not reasonable. You know what I'm saying? Roman.
Speaking of local wrestlers I've worked with, when Brock Lesnar came back and threw that cameraman down, that was I'm pretty sure that was Niles Blanquet, which is a wrestler that I've worked with at SWE. So that was kind of funny to see that. Yeah. So what were we talking about? I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about the AEW, just the battle going on and stuff, and everything that happened with. Roman recently did he doesn't normally do a lot of podcasts and stuff, and he recently did a podcast, and on that he was also throwing fireballs like fucking Bischoff is doing now. Like, my favorite comment from it was on CM Punk and AEW roster. It was, when it comes down to it, I'll throw him and pretty much the rest of that roster out the club. No problem. They're just little brothers. And I was like, okay, now Roman Reigns, now you've done a good interview. Like, now because really that was better than some of the stuff he says on TV, and some of the stuff that he says on TV now is getting really good. You know what I'm saying? Like, but that was like one of the best lines that I've heard him throw, because he's not going to say that on TV because they don't talk about AEW on WWE. But like, for him to go on that podcast and be still in character and able to throw that shit out, like that's perfect. Like, that's exactly what he should say. You know what I mean? Because it's true. Like, let's be honest. Other than, I guess, Jorge Masvidal, if he maybe fights in AEW, I guess other than him, he could probably take everybody in AEW. Maybe Junior Dos Santos, the MMA guys. Other than the MMA guys, and even of the MMA guys, the Jericho, what's his name, Jack Swagger, he could still beat up Jack Swagger. Come on, we all know that.
I'm pretty sure Orange Cassidy is a shooter, but
Speaking of that, what's the guy's name from last night? Saito Su, the guy on NXT last night. That's Jimmy and Jey Uso's brother.
Which one?
You don't remember the guy that came out last night when LA Knight and them were talking?
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah.
What's his name? Let me look that up here in a second. But yeah, no, he made his debut on NXT last night. That guy's cool. He was cool.
Bro,
I like that guy.
Braun Breaker, bro, doing Frankensteiners.
My favorite thing. Oh my god, I loved last night. There was the night of the last night of the deal. They had predicted this one wrestling news site had predicted that, like, oh, Braun Breaker's probably going to win the belt tonight. They didn't say that. They said Braun Breaker's really on a lot of people want to really do that. Also, Tommaso Ciampa might be coming to the end of his run because we're trying to do the new wave of young talent and all this stuff. And then after the deal, he's like, never said that he was going to win. Never said. That's the wrestling news site, shuffle that they have to do. Like,
this might be a hot take, but I feel like Tommaso is going to just relinquish the title. Like, they're going to do a Samoa Joe type situation where he's just going to give it back. Like, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe he loses to that. Maybe he loses to that politically correct woke guy. What's that guy's name? I love that guy.
Yeah, John or Lou Gacy. Something Gacy.
Is it Joe Gacy? It's Joe Gacy, right? Yeah, Joe Gacy.
Yeah, it's the Joey Ryan gimmick. That's what we were talking about earlier.
This guy. That's okay. I get it.
Yeah. You didn't get that earlier? Okay. Well. All right. Well, Dynamite tonight is going to be really exciting. We already know going into it that there's 2 Dark Order matches. The Dark Order, I think one of them
is the kid in one of them?
Dude, you know that -1's going to be there. Like, I think 10 is fighting John Moxley, and then they're having a tag team match. Like, we know going into it, there's 2 Dark Order segments.
Dude, we lose so many viewers when I talk about how much I hate the kid. But oh my god, I hate the kid.
I turn it off. It makes me feel so uncomfortable. Like, I literally turn it off whenever he comes on. Because I just can't deal with it. Like, I feel like they're really emotionally scarring that kid by putting him on TV.
Dude.
Like,
well, and giving him a babysitter and everything and stuff. Like, it's just, I don't know, man. I just don't think this is the way for that kid to grieve. I understand it's cool. Like, I don't know.
There was there was a moment when they were.
I felt bad when that kid won the tag team title with Kane or whatever. You remember that? Like
with Braun Strowman.
Nicholas.
Yeah,
Nicholas.
With Braun Strowman. Yeah.
Okay, fuck, dude. I felt bad for that kid. I felt bad for that kid when that happened. You know
there was a moment fairly early on when somebody had a finish and they were it was a squash match on Dark, and the other opponent was basically trying to act like it was knocked out. So he's basically on the mat acting like he's dead, and then -1 gets in the ring and starts talking trash to him and stands on top of him and everything. I'm like, dude, this has got to be so emotionally
Oh,
scarring for
God,
this
yeah.
kid.
No, this guy, like, if you saw the Dark Side of the Ring with the Pillman stuff, like, yeah, it's got to be worse than the Pillman kid, you know? Like, I never knew how to throw a baseball. I never knew. I didn't know how to throw a baseball.
Yeah.
I didn't know nobody throw a baseball with. But
And
dude,
then they had
that's
some sort of
supposedly
like
like,
they had like a fan meetup, and I think somebody on Twitter was like, what AEW superstar do you want to meet? And this one guy was like, I want to meet -1. Like, that's so fucking weird.
oh God, oh Jesus, let him meet, but like have Chris Hansen there when he meets, you
For
know?
real.
Like, why don't you have a seat? What have you got in the bag there?
Not a fan. Not a fan of -1. I gotta say, maybe that makes me a bad person, but it's how I feel. I don't know.
I'm not a fan of it either. I don't think that like that's like on one hand we're trying to like beat WWE and like take over wrestling and stuff, but on the other hand we're like, you know what I mean? Like we're placating. I don't know. Like I get what they're doing and why they're doing it. I do, but like I don't want to say shits in the face of what can I say? It kind of goes against people that have like in Japan, like people that have like worked out for 6 years before they ever got to get in a ring in a real match or something. You know what I mean? Or people that have like even the fucking guy that like fucking didn't have a leg that fought Vince McMahon and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's just fucking it just goes in the face against people that have like really not well, even just like up to the Daniel Bryan, like Yeselmania and stuff, like just underdogs. It makes it lowers the fucking bar for underdogs so much that it's like, well, you know, we'll throw the kid out there. Like, come on, like I don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of the Ramka Chow, the fucking little girl that was a Japanese wrestler that she was supposedly like a ghost and stuff, and she was like a demon or something inside of her, and she did that. It basically means like the chairman in Japanese, and she was basically like the head of this giant, like basically like the Dark Order and like they're doing now. I liked her, but she was like. I don't know. She was used differently. She wasn't brought out because of something like that. She was brought out because they were like, "Oh, we'll do like a little kid thing," you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And now she's a full-on wrestler. Now she's grown up, and she's still a wrestler. So maybe she's
Is
not
it
scarred. Maybe
Riho? Is that what you're talking about? Riho?
no. It's Ram Kai Chow is her name. Yeah.
I'll take your word on that. Anything else for the viewers? My dog is barking at something outside, so I'm trying.
I think he's barking because we didn't talk about how even though Kyle Larson has really learned his lesson and stuff, a few weeks ago at Talladega, Bubba Wallace became the first driver to win a NASCAR race since 1964 or
By
63, whichever you
default.
believe.
By default.
What are you talking about by default? Hey, look, if that racist track that wanted to put a noose in his stall last year, if they wanted to keep that going, they should have put lights up. They didn't put lights up, and we ran out of daylight, and so Bubba won, and that's that.
I will say he was out front. I mean, you really can't take anything away from it. It's really hard to even lead a race at any point of a race, and the fact he was out front at the time that they called it. So it's like,
Would
yeah.
you feel? You'd feel like he wanted if it was Matt DiBenedetto. Matt DiBenedetto was out there crying and talking about winning. You know
Matt
what I mean?
DiBenedetto wrecked. Wait, who was it that
Matt
won?
DiBenedetto's
No,
career is
I'm
over as a
talking about
full-time NASCAR driver.
Michael McDowell. Wrecked like half the like. Would you rather somebody wreck half the field so they can win, or just like like win because of a rain delay? Like there's layers to this to
Listen,
Talladega.
no, winning is winning. So you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Exactly.
It's too hard to do in the Cup Series, in anything like that, in any top series. It's too hard to do, but Cup Series especially hard.
For sure. Most definitely. But
At
yeah, that
that
was a
track
thing.
too, yeah. At that track, that's another one. Like that's how they won. Is let's be honest, that's how they won. Is it's a track where any car can win, and they definitely don't have a winning car yet at 2311 Racing. But because they were at Talladega, a track where any car can win, that's how they were able to get in front. And then by default, like you said, because of the rain delay and them calling the race because there not being enough light, That's how they ended up winning. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, it had to be at a track like that. That and they pulled it off. Like you really only got 4 chances because you got Talladega, and Daytona, and that's it. If you're going to be that like in that level of team, if you're going to be like bad enough that those are the only tracks we can win at, those are the only tracks where literally every car can win at, and they won. So
I
good
mean,
on them.
it's a brand new team. We'll see how it develops. I know they lost one of their charters, or the one they were supposed to have for next year. So that's like, does
They
Kurt
were
Busch have a seat next year?
Yes, they were supposed to be buying one of the charters that Spire Motorsports has for sale. In 2311, when they named that they were going to do a 45 next year, they were going to race another car and have a 45 as well as the 23. And they named Kurt Busch as Kyle Busch's brother, Kurt Busch, as current. He's in the one at Chip Ganassi, and Chip Ganassi's going away next year. They got bought by the Pitbull team, the team that Pitbull owns. And anyway, so Kurt is
Trackhouse.
going there, and he's gonna Trackhouse, and he's gonna be going into the 45 at 2311. And they don't actually have a charter for that car. They've gotten the number and stuff like that, but they can't. They were in negotiations with Spire Motorsports to buy one of the charters that Spire has up for sale, or the charter that Spire has up for sale. And apparently they pissed him off enough that Spire walked away from it. They told him, look, we're not selling it to you, period. And they walked away. But there's other stuff. They could lease one from a lot of teams. There's several teams that have one up for lease that could lease one. And then, and that's one of the likely situations until a better deal can come along. The only other thing is they could maybe buy one from, and it would be a turnover deal. They could maybe buy one from Colleague Racing, because Colleague has 2 cars in the Cup Series, 2 charters in the Cup Series next year, so they have 2 rides. But really, they only have 1 driver, because their plan was, when they put 2 rides, was to have AJ Allmendinger and Justin Haley to be the 2 drivers in the Cup Series. But AJ Allmendinger informed them a few weeks ago that he doesn't want to do every Cup Series race. He'll do some, like the road courses and stuff like that, but he doesn't want to do every Cup Series race. He likes it in the Xfinity Series. And they're still going to keep their Xfinity Series teams going. And they're still going to have 3 cars in the Xfinity Series as well as 2 cars in the Cup Series. And so they had already planned on it being AJ, and him to give them like that ultimatum, like, hey, I don't want to do that. I'm sure it came as a surprise to them. And so they may very well sell one of their charters next year in the Cup Series. The problem with that is the reason they bought 2 was because, and they went out of their way to buy 2. The reason they bought 2 was because they wanted to go full in. They didn't want to be a 1-car team and be behind on data compared to everybody else. Because the Chevy teams notoriously don't share data as well as the other teams, and across manufacturers and stuff. And so basically they would have been by themselves. And so they really wanted to have 2 cars so that they were sure they would have a good amount of data and have a good entry into that in case they knew something, kind of like with F1 switching the rules next year. The car completely different in NASCAR next year. And so they might find something that the other teams don't and somehow have a big advantage early in the season, or throughout the whole first season. They might have a big advantage, and so they might turn out to be the best NASCAR team there is. And they don't want to be hampered by the fact that they are only a 1-car team. If that happens, if something like that happens, they want to have the data of the 2 teams. So they're kind of in a weird situation. It could possibly come from them. But the more likely situation is that 2311 will lease a charter from one of the other team, Go Fast Race, a bunch of teams. I don't know though. Parker Kligerman was literally in the cars that I bitch about in NASCAR, the cars that shouldn't be on the track, the cars that are just absolutely dog shit and are really just out there to start the race and then come in. They're just the super slow NASCARs that are always on the track with all the other cars, so they can have 40 cars start the race. Parker Kligerman went out there in one of those this weekend and finished on the same lap as the leaders. and there were only like maybe 10, 11 cars on the lead lap when they finished. And he did like that was amazing. It was one of the best runs in a really bad NASCAR at a track where you really have to have a good car. It was amazing. Like it was one of the best low team runs I've seen in a long time. So kudos to him. And we'll see if the 2311 team is able to find another charter. Surely they will. They've already done the release of the car and everything. Plus, Kurt Busch is bringing Monster as a sponsor with him. That's one of the reasons he got brought over, is not only because he's a great leader and all that, but he has a personal sponsorship with Monster, and he was energy drinks, and he was bringing that with him. So he'll be bringing that sponsorship to the cars. So that's huge.
Well, plus I think just NASCAR in general will bend over backwards to try to keep or to do anything, since Michael Jordan is the owner, to try to keep him happy. And then also, the Monster sponsorship is a pretty big deal, so I'm sure they'll figure something out. All right, with that, guys, we're at about hour 15 minutes. Thank everybody for listening to this Halloween edition of the Atomic Marks podcast, and hopefully we'll have another one of these out shortly. Again, DMPunk, thank you for being on. Any last words?
Thanks for listening. See you later.
All right, guys. I'll see y'all later.